Top of the SportsMax Zone for this Wednesday. Ever since the retirement of Jamaican sprint legend Usain Bolt, the sport of track and field has often been criticised for lacking global superstars. Recent data, including that presented by Google Trends, indicating that the sport is currently being impacted by a waning fan base and a decrease in global viewership. However, the American former world record holder and four-time Olympic gold medalist Michael Johnson tweeted a raft of recommendations, including a pro-track series that he believes would assist to resuscitate the sport. Here's some of what Johnson said. There is a basic profit formula for pro sport. Quality product leads to fans, leads to media rights and sponsors, leads to revenue. The athlete plays an important role in this. Great athletes plus good competition equals quality product. Athletes are key to the product and revenue, and comes back to athletes as compensation for the sport itself. He went on to say 10 to 12 competitions annually, possibly 4 majors like tennis, events 100, 200, 400, 800, 1500, 5000, sprint hurdles, 400 hurdles, 4x1 relay, 4x4 relay, only events that can be televised from start to finish without interruption. Field events included only if they could be reimagined in a fast track format. Take no more than 15 minutes start to finish so viewers miss none of the action. Athletes selected to compete based 80% on performance, 20% on popularity, and include only the best of the best, regardless of country. Significantly higher appearance fees than current competitions to guarantee key matchups. A mouthful there from Michael Johnson. Joining us to dissect these recommendations and assess their practicality is sports marketing consultant Carole Beckford and technical director of Jamaica's World Championship and Olympic teams, Maurice Wilson. Two guests that have something major in common. Ferncourt High School past students, head boy and head girl, consecutive years. I'm not sure how we ended up with this, Maurice and Carole, but we're happy to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon, my colleague and friend.
How are you?
Just to say that I was our senior.
I realize that.
And it's pretty obvious now.
Okay, let me start with Carole. I'm sure you won't mind, Maurice, but you are a student of track and field, Carole, and I know that you would have taken note of a lot of what Michael Johnson is proposing. Your overall thoughts on what he has presented?
At the very least, it's a fairly decent suggestion, but with the evolution of track and field as it is, there can be some tweaks. It's funny, I interviewed with Simon Boyne in New Zealand a couple of months ago, and I had the same kind of thinking. Now we see where this 3-hour timeline for sports, NBA, NFL, has been, and I think we can package. That was the intention of the Diamond League.
Yes. And
somehow we kind of swerved from it. But the truth is, we have not been able to ascertain things like viewing rights, media rights, and all those things. So track and field has had this kind of a secret society kind of a behavior. And as a result, it is still kept a good secret. And so we're now going to have to explore and expand what we can possibly think about to make it, one, fitting for TV, but to attract the kind of investment that it really truly desires.
Yeah. Maurice, I want a quick comment from you on the duration of track and field events and broadcasts, because I remember going to an international broadcasters meeting in Athens ahead, I think, of the 2004 Olympics, and the international broadcasters were discussing the Golden League as it was then. It wasn't the Diamond League then. And they were talking about condensing the meet into like a two-hour block of broadcasting as opposed to 2.5 or 3, as it probably would have been in those years. But do you find that a broadcast in excess of 2 hours in sport is something that's a turn-off for viewers?
Well, specifically from a track and field standpoint, yes. What COVID would have done for us, we had to amalgamate most of the events within a short period of time based on what was happening at that time. And we would have seen the results. We would have seen the results from a local standpoint in that most persons are now asking, or they are suggesting that the meets are too long, from 9 o'clock until 4 o'clock. As a matter of fact, our president, Garth Gale, spoke to it the other day. And so when you think about the marketing aspect of promoting especially track and field, I think we will have to condense the meet in such a way that it is spectator friendly. Just over the weekend, I was privileged to a meet that was held in Miami. And what I saw really added to some of what Michael would have said in terms of making the meet spectator friendly. So this has to be the direction in which we're going to go if we're going to improve on the marketing aspect and the spectator support in relation to the sport.
I think a couple of things need to be defined here, and I'm going to need your assistance, Carol, in terms of what was just said, spectator friendly, as opposed to media, television, broadcast friendly. Because I've heard people speak about going to an NFL game inside the stadium, and it is boring as heck. But for us watching on television, it's really exciting, it's really gripping. So could you define exactly where you think Michael Johnson is leading to in terms of describing, is this a spectator-friendly thing that they're looking at, or are we talking about what broadcast TV can do in the 3-hour window that is being proposed?
I think it's more or less what broadcast media can do within that time frame. But also, when you say spectator-friendly, at the stadiums now that are being built, it's a home away from home. I mean, when you go to the new Yankee Stadium, for example, you never miss a beat. You go to the bathroom, you go to the concessionaires, you can see the action. You have 360-degree cameras, you have everything to your content. Sitting in the stands is almost like secondary to what's happening in the sport. And it is the last 2 minutes, if you're locked at 3-all, 4-all, it's that last 2 minutes. And so you have OTT, over-the-top media, but then the digital space has created snippets of those things. And how you get that? Fan interaction, almost, you can play the game while it's playing, that kind of a thing. So there is so much. And what Michael has suggested is something that we have thought about. But when you think of something like shot put, that it comes down to the 6th throw to get a winner. For example, you probably should have 3 rounds within the 3-hour time frame. And so those are some adjustments, but those are some special events. Probably 7. I wouldn't go to 14 as much as he suggested, I think. I think 7 in the first year probably would start, and then we assess it. Because over time, it has to change. Because track and field could almost be considered boring at this stage.
Almost. Maurice, I'm going to get involved again because I'm seeing where there has been an exclusion of certain field events, and he said that it could be implemented after a while, and that each event should take no more than 15 minutes, I'm hearing. I know that you're in love with all or most of the field events, but your take on that in regards to the exclusion of some of these field events?
An excellent point, Donald. And so as a purist, I have to think on both sides of the fence. And we may have to do something similarly to cricket. How 2020 would have come in and would have taken somewhat away from the normal test cricket. However, you still have that component. And so choices may have to be made in order for the sport to move forward. Nothing in life is equal. So we may have to look at those sports, for example, pole vault, where you can vault in the back of your yard, like what the Plantation did the other day during COVID, and will attract an audience. Or you may have to do some amount of adjustment to shot put. So if you deliver the shot and it lands in a bucket or something like that, you get something that can attract spectator support. Because remember, the competition is coming from artificial intelligence. You have esports and all of these, and you mentioned it, and Carol spoke to it in a very articulate way, in relation to what is happening in terms of viewership in comparison to what is actually happening on the ground. So I think you can look at it from a twofold perspective in terms of viewership and then what happens at the stadium. But we have to be careful in taking away from those, what I would call traditional events, but there has to be, charges must be made in order for the sport to move forward from a marketing perspective.
But Carol, in terms of what the viewers expect, people, I believe, when they are looking at sporting events, are attracted to two things in a television broadcast: the narrative and the competition. My question is, how do we fix both? In regards to competition, it's pretty obvious: get the stars. But in terms of the narrative, what do we do in the lead up to these events to bring in a new audience?
No, storytelling is a way to go. But all the sports are moving towards the T20 version of their respective sports. Hockey now has a Hockey 5. Netball has Fast 5. And of course, cricket started with T20. Track and field.
Well, there's T10 now as well, yeah.
T10. Oh, yeah. And yeah, Big Six. I mean, Chris Gayle is doing his own thing. But track and field now has to move to something. And in the first year, I think you can get a 3-hour package and pick out the stars. And then have that as a special showcase. Check with it digitally, do everything, and then determine how we move forward. But remember, you still have the World Championships and the Olympics with the longer versions of the game or of the sport. Pretty much like Test cricket and ODI.
But what is interesting, that a 100-meter race lasts for about 10-11 seconds, right? I mean, you can't get much shorter than this. So I think the onus is on the broadcasters to make it attractive.
All right, volleyball changed their rules over the last couple of years. Remember, you could only serve from the right back. And then you now have a defensive player called a libero, which comes on, and you can serve from anywhere across the line. They have adjusted because of television. Remember, I played volleyball in a time when you could only win a point on the serve.
Yes.
Right? And now there's pickleball.
Yeah.
So there are just so many things, and the competition is too great not to make the adjustment.
Yeah, I think the table tennis ball has changed too in the past 10 years or so. I think the table tennis ball has actually changed. Let me ask you a question, and Maurice could comment on this as well. A lot of sports administrators, I'm talking about the head of the bodies now, tend to be older people. Sebastian Coe is 66 years old, but he obviously is a more modern thinker than a lot of people his age. But I'm curious about a response from Lord Sebastian Coe on Michael Johnson's proposals here. Let me start with Maurice. Do you think these proposals are proposals that would sit well with Lord Sebastian Coe, the 66-year-old former Olympic champion?
Well, let me speak to it this way. There has to be a clear line of demarcation between the federation responsibilities and private sector responsibilities. So the federation, and I think Michael spoke to it, should focus, for example, on the Olympics, World Championships. So we still have those traditional events, and it caters for all individuals. And then you have private sector engagement with the blessing from federation leaders, for example, Lord Sebastian, that will give the support to these private entities who wants to market the sport in a very profitable way for the athletes and also those who are invested.
Yeah. So
I would speak to that particular point.
Okay, so if I'm understanding Maurice correctly, Carol, that Michael Johnson has no issues with the Olympics and the World Championships as it is, but he said events throughout the year, like 4 majors, as you would have in tennis, so some Grand Slam track and field events is where he's thinking to sort of enhance the calendar of events for track and field.
Right, and it would be endorsed by the World Athletics body.
Yes.
But what we can have, though, there must be an open discussion about what track and field is really worth. Every other sport has a broadcast deal value. We don't know what that is in track and field. And that is one of the reasons why it's ranked so much. This is ranked lowly on the sports scale. We have to open it up. And as a result of that, we have to be able to determine what 100 meter is worth,
Yeah.
right down to the triple jump. Yeah. You know, when I looked at the young Jaden Hibbert on the weekend for the Curved Games, he took, what, 8 or 9 roughly steps. And that is a new thing. Now, what some of my digital, even some of your youngsters here could do with that 8-step jump. Remember, they said Usain took 42 steps when he ran 9.58.
Yeah.
Those are digital things that you can work on to get people involved. And so I've always complained about World Athletics not doing what they're required to do. Get a guy from the NBA. CONCACAF did that. They stole one of their guys in marketing from the NBA.
Yes.
Have integration, because those are the people who understand broadcast media and how they can get that kind of attention.
And the mileage
and the mileage out of it, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting discussion here about track and field and some proposals put forward by Michael Johnson to beef up interest in the sport as track and field is losing eyes globally. We go to break. When we come back, we continue this discussion.
Stay with SportsMax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news and entertainment.